Sue. Welcome to Fireside Chat. I hope you're doing well today. Today, I wanted to talk about there's a great big voting block of young people. About 8 million youth are going to be eligible to vote in 2024 by November of this year. And I just wanted to just read a little article. This is from Tufts. They're from Tisch College, and they have a Center for Information and Research on Civil Learning and Engagement. New estimates show that 8 million youth are aging into the electorate in 2024, joining a diverse and politically active generation that can have a major impact on elections. The authors are Alberto Medina and Sarah Suzuki. So, more than 8 million youth who need to be engaged in the electoral process will have reached voting age in 2024 since the 2022 midterms. Nearly half, 45%, of the Gen Z electorate in 2024 is people of color, including, about 47% of newly eligible voters who have aged in are youth of color. There's diverse electorates in the South and West. So in regions with key swing states, Asian, Black, and Latino youth make up a large share of newly eligible voters. In recent years, Gen Z has been a major force in civic life, leading social movements and voting at higher rates than previous generations did when they were the same age. In the next presidential election this November, 40.8 million members of Gen Z who are ages 18 to 27 in 2024 will be eligible to vote, including 8.3 million newly eligible youth who were ages 18-19 in 2024 who will influence elections. And these young people have tremendous potential to influence elections and to spur action on issues they care about if they are adequately reached and supported by parties, campaigns, and organizations. A diverse electorate. Young voters are often talked about as a monolithic group, but they are a highly diverse organization, a generation whose identities and experiences shape their political attitudes and engagement. About 45% of the 40 million Gen Zs who will be eligible to vote in 2024 are young people of color, including 8.8 million Latinos, 5.7 million Black youth, 1.7 million Asian Americans, and 1.8 million multiracial youth. Among the newly eligible voters since 2022, those ages 18-19 in 2024, young people of color make up an even higher 47% share. The diversity of this age group presents both challenges and opportunities to expand the electorate and build a more representative democracy. Young people of color have historically voted at lower rates than white youth and did so again in 2020 and in 2022 for the midterms. Youth who have different identities often have different issue concerns. They face varied barriers to participation and require different pathways to electoral engagement. In addition, the newest eligible voters, who are ages 18-19, often vote at lower rates, 18% in 2022, compared to 24% among youth ages 20 to 29. Addressing these differences and inequities will require concerted efforts to reach and engage young people across age groups, race, ethnicity, rurality, and other factors. The task of engaging youth of color is vital across the country, but may be especially critical in the South and West, as defined by the U.S. Census, where they make up a majority of the electorate that will be eligible to cast a ballot. I lost my place. So, when we're talking about if youth do not feel supported, that they have a voice, they may not actually engage in the electoral process. Rural youth are less likely to feel that civic education has shaped their perception and understanding of our democratic system. There seems to be less civic support for rural youth. Rural and urban youth are getting similar levels of civic information, but rural youth lack the support to take action on it. Rural youth belong to groups at similar rates to urban youth, but less than 1 in 5 have opportunities to use their voice in groups. The urban-rural divide is one of several inequities that affect youth civic engagement and often result in unequal outcomes, such as voting rates that keep rural youth underrepresented in civic life. These inequities are often about access to information and opportunities, especially in communities that are more likely to be civic deserts. However, even when there is relatively equal civic access, the barriers faced by rural youth can run deeper, particularly as it relates to the quality and ultimate perception of such opportunities. A new analysis based on Circle's pre-2024 youth survey of 18 to 34-year-olds underscores these dynamics. We generally find similar levels of access and exposure to civic learning and engagement between rural and urban youth based on the findings, the limited measures we asked about, but significant gaps in support and civic culture. This new data supports the findings from the Circle's 2023 learning community of rural leaders and practitioners who shared that there are crises and barriers impacting rural youth's ability to participate long before they encounter any existing opportunities for learning and engagement. Circle's Growing Voters framework outlines 3 elements that must be in place for effective engagement of young people at the local level: access and exposure to opportunities for civic learning and engagement, support to take advantage of those opportunities, and a civic culture in our communities that embeds these opportunities with meaning. Traditional youth voter engagement, often with a myopic focus on the transactional work of voter registration, covers access and exposure well, but can fail to provide the support or culture that help to bring more young voters into the fold. We really need Gen Z voters to show up at this unbelievably important election. I would love for people to, if they aren't sure if they're going to be able to make it to a polling place on the day, highly recommend going to your city clerk and asking for an absentee ballot. You don't need to have a reason in Michigan. I went to the Rochester City Clerk's office and I said I'd like an absentee ballot, and showed my driver's license, and they sent me one to my home a few days ago, and everything's in one envelope. And so if I have to work that night or if I can't make it, then I can still vote and have my have my vote count. So highly recommend that. If you don't have a car, you're not sure how you're going to get to a voting place, or if you're not sure if you have to work, or you might have another engagement or have to be out of town. That's really important. We need every single vote that we possibly can for this election. And make sure that you read up on the issues that are important. Think about the track record and also the criminal record of some of the candidates, and realize that you are absolutely influencing the future for our children and our grandchildren and many generations to come. And so it absolutely is so important that people go vote, because, oh my goodness, it's just the most important thing. I want to go back to the article here. This was really good about a youth poll. So youth are likely to vote and focused on key issues. So the Circle pre-2024 election youth survey was developed by Circle at Tufts University, and the polling firm Ipsos collected the data from their nationally representative panel of respondents between October 25 and November 2 in 2023. The study surveyed a total of 2,017 self-reported U.S. citizens ages 18 to 34 in the United States. Unless otherwise mentioned, data are for all 18 to 34-year-olds in our sample. When data is reported by educational experience, i.e. college or no college, the sample used ages 21 to 34 in order to account for young people who may pursue higher education later in life. So the main findings are that 57% of youth ages 18 to 34 say they're extremely likely to vote in 2024, and another 15% say they're fairly likely to cast a ballot in the election. So that would be mostly Gen Zs, and some of millennials are 31, 32. They could have a little bit of millennials in that grouping. Among youth who are extremely likely to vote, 51% back the Democratic candidate and 30% the Republican. Key issues for young people, so Gen Z and millennials, their top issues are inflation, cost of living, jobs that pay a living wage, gun violence, and climate change. Youth who selected climate as a top issue were 20 points more likely than youth who did not choose climate to say they'll vote in 2024, and 37 points more likely to prefer a Democrat for president. Because the Democrats are really the only party who actually champions climate change and doesn't scoff at scientists who have been saying we are in trouble for generations. 19% have heard from campaigns, so less than 1 in 5 young people have heard about politics and issues this year from political parties or campaigns, 19%, or from community organizations, 14%, highlighting the need for more outreach to all youth. I know for sure that the AFL-CIO and other, they're nonpartisan. They have teams of people who are going to be going out in Oakland and Macomb counties to go door to door and to ask folks some questions about the election and to get their views from people who are actually, ordinary everyday voters who answer the door and who can talk to the people who are canvassing. And that actually informs very on the ground, very relevant of the moment opinions from people who are the affected voters. So, another thing about Gen Z is that there's such an awareness, about neurodivergence and neurotypicalness, and close to half of young people say they're struggling with mental health issues like loneliness or lack of confidence. And those who do are less likely to vote. And this is tragic. I really think that mental health is probably the most important thing that a parent can make available to their child, and that there should absolutely be no stigma whatsoever, because there's so many of us who need to talk to someone. And I feel that this generation, Gen Z, absolutely, they don't always have the social networks that combine to give them a meaningful life and a feeling of purpose and a feeling of being accepted and part of a community. I really feel that Gen Z, more than any other generation, desperately needs to be heard, and that their diversity and their wonderful strengths across the board on all these different spectrums really give them amazing heart and soul that they bring to their lives, and that it's absolutely important that all young people, that all of our kids have a voice and have access to be cared for, because it's probably the loneliest generation that we've ever had. And it's heartbreaking, and it doesn't have to be that way. In the past decade, young people have risen to the forefront of civic and political life in the United States. They have led major movements for action on issues like gun violence, climate, and racial justice. They have voted at historic rates compared to youth in previous decades, and their choices on the ballot have influenced key elections. In 2024, Gen Z youth alone will wake up over 40 million potential voters, including 8 million youth who will have newly reached voting age since 2022, that makes up nearly 1/5 of the American electorate. We need you, Gen Z. We need you, millennials. I'll tell you, we need you. Together with the youngest millennials, young people aged 18 to 34 are poised to be a potential force in the next presidential election. But young people are also living through trying times in their personal lives, so understandable, for our country and around the world, that make their continued civic participation far from guaranteed. The nation's economy, while strong by some accounts, has nonetheless left many young people concerned about jobs, the cost of living, and their financial situation. So many young people can't have a home of their own. They have to stay with their parents. They have to not have any of a dream to actually grow, grow into the place where they have, they have savings and down payment and things like that. That it's really sad, because they deserve the same opportunity that the other generations have had to, buy their first car and have their first apartment and have a family and get married and have a life. I think that so many Gen Zs and millennials are questioning, can they afford any of those things? Can they afford to leave their parents' home? Can they afford to go to college, or to take up some kind of trade, or to have to apply to hundreds or 1,000 jobs and get ghosted by employers, so they never find out if anyone's going to ever call. Some people have sent out like 750 applications, and they've maybe gone on 2 interviews. It's unbelievably competitive and really sad. And so you can just imagine the effect on someone's mental state, if they are in a situation that they are just so, they feel so beat down, they feel so hopeless, and are so discouraged by their prospects, whether in socially or with their career, and certainly their mental health can be very much endangered by how difficult things are for most of us. A mental health crisis affects many young people's ability and desire to vote and engage in their communities. And many are looking ahead, though not necessarily looking forward to a potential presidential rematch in 2024 between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump, two candidates that have not often garnered young people's approval and enthusiasm. The Circle Pre-2024 Election Youth Survey provides key insights on these questions early on in the election cycle when there is still time for campaigns and communities to take action, invest in young people, and address their needs. Crucially, it highlights the critical differences by race, education, and rurality that shape the political views and engagement of the most diverse generations in American history. We are so much stronger and so much more able to have so many different strengths in the world by embracing the different cultures, the different languages, the different religions and cultures that make up our country. It's a superpower, and we have to treat all of youth the same, and not just red states and blue states, but blue states are the ones that don't hold back benefits and help for Republicans, even though Republicans always want to unfairly suppress voting rights and even human rights, women's rights. And so it's absolutely crucial. It's life and death important that our young people go out and vote or vote absentee for the party that actually embraces diversity, inclusion, and it shouldn't be anyone else's decision. What we do with our bodies, who we love, remember that when you go to the polls, who is going to support you and where you feel at home and welcomed and loved, as opposed to a stark, terrible, endless Project 2025, that we cannot have that happen. This initial analysis from our nationally representative poll of youth ages 18 to 34 reveals major trends about youth, including a majority say they're very likely to vote in 2024, though groups like Black youth and youth without college experience, who are getting less information about the election and support to participate, are less likely to say they'll cast a ballot. Youth overall prefer a Democratic candidate by a double-digit margin. Should be as many as we possibly can get interested to let them know what the issues are and who comes out on the right side of history. But nearly a third are undecided, which is unbelievable, and some groups of youth might even consider a GOP nominee. Issues like climate change and gun violence remain at the center of youth engagement in politics and elections, but the cost of living is, by a wide margin, young people's top concern. That is so true. Completely agree. So it's very important that we take this deadly seriously, that this is the most important election in our lives, and if we choose a Republican candidate, it will be the last election of our lives. So just want to cheer for the people who are fighting to make America better for all Americans, Americans of all genders, of all races, of all orientations, of all identities. There's only one party that includes everyone and celebrates differences because we are so much stronger with the benefit of cultures and languages. And just think about the foods and the wonderful kinds of traditions and just lovely parts of culture that, we can embrace and we can celebrate and we can help everyone to feel included. As human beings, we just really want to belong. We just so want to belong. And there's only one party who absolutely embraces and cares and puts their money where their mouth is, and literally policy. For example, student loans are absolutely blocked by one party and completely and totally embraced by the other party. And if you still have student loans for the first 30 years of your life, those years could have been spent saving for a home, but instead, there are some people who are in their 50s and 60s who still have student debt. And how on earth are you supposed to retire if you haven't even had a chance to be free of that debt and to be able to participate in the economy? So truthfully, if student debt is taken care of, then the economy benefits for all of those generations, the current generations, but also future generations, because young people would have money to save up for a car and a home and have a family and have a nice life, as opposed to so many of us that, are having to be saddled with debt forever for our whole lives. And that's not okay. Especially if many PPP loans were forgiven by millionaires for millionaires. It's really unfair and disgusting. So just wanted to salute Gen Z, millennials. Thank you so much for caring about these really important issues. Thank you so much for marching, like the March for Our Lives that the Parkland survivors conducted, and how many people were awestruck by the way that they presented their case. And I remember this one survivor, she is so powerful, and she went to the microphone in front of everyone, and she literally stopped talking and didn't say anything, didn't indicate what was going on. She was just standing, waiting for 17 minutes in silence. And people were trying to say, hey, you're doing great. We support you. And they're cheering and they're trying to encourage her because, what's wrong? Why isn't she saying anything? Is she all right? And at the end of a very long 17 minutes, she came back to the microphone and she said that was how long the shooter was in the building. That is how long. None of us knew if we were going to live or die. And that we could hear shots being fired. We could hear screams. When we're walking out of the school, we see the aftermath of this horrific, unbelievable crime. And it amazes me that there's people in Congress who are somehow, I guess, not affected by gun violence themselves, so they don't really care. It really changes your life if you're the one that's fighting for your breath, and you're fighting to live, and you're never sure if you're going to see your parents again or your family again. And there's just one party who can get us into the future in the safest way, in the most dignified way. And that's the Democratic Party. So no matter what, we have to vote for ourselves and our rights and our bodies and our orientations. Because if we don't vote this election as Democrats, we may never vote again. So, really thought how much I appreciate and encourage Gen Z and millennials and everyone. Please get out and vote. Vote absentee if you aren't sure how you can get to the polling place. If you are going to go to the polling place, bring others, bring neighbors, bring family members, bring friends, and go and have your voices heard. Because, my God, we have to win. So, yeah, wishing you a good afternoon, and we'll talk soon. And we'll talk more about these issues and these topics, because it's really important that we tell the truth and that we have no agenda. We are not making money. We're not being paid. There's no money anywhere in any of this. It's just from the heart. And because I love our country so much, and it's really important that our young people feel included, celebrated, welcomed, and important. Thank you, and have a great afternoon. Talk to you next time.